You're listening to Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. And if you've ever said, relative to time, that you don't have enough time and you're overwhelmed and you're always chasing hours and you can't get it done, and maybe you've even said, you know what, I wish I could clone myself because I need more of me, then you're going to love this podcast. See, managing your time, effort, and energy are all about your unconscious paradigms and habits and not about a clock. And when you start working from there, managing your time becomes very easily. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. All right, this is not going to be a time management episode. I'm not going to talk to you about time management and give you processes or tactics or any of that. This episode is about your brain-based habits. It's about your unconscious paradigms, and it's about your unconscious values that drive you. Because see, these are all internal things, and these all drive what you do. And then what people try to do is they try to actually fit their unconscious values and habits and paradigms into a clock. And then, like I started this episode with, is most people never have enough time. So this is not going to be a really, really long episode. Hopefully I'm going to make it a little shorter, but definitely once you're done with this episode, you'll understand that managing your time is no longer about the clock. Something else that I want to mention is that one of the biggest traps that a lot of people get into is they manage their time by circumstance, they manage their time by time, and they manage their time by convenience. What I want you to get, and this is something that I learned from a coach of mine, and it was life-changing, is, and you may want to write this down, you hear me say, if you're not driving, you may want to write this down, but it's this simple phrase: when I manage my time by time, I never have enough time. I'll repeat that. When I manage my time by time, I will never have enough time. And the same thing applies to our circumstances and convenience. When I manage my time by circumstance, I will never have enough time. And when I manage my time by convenience, I will never have enough time. We're not going to get into it this podcast and this episode, but managing our lives by convenience is what most of us do. And then we wonder why we're not getting the outcomes that we want. All right, so I just said that many of us work by circumstance. Here's something else that I want you to understand, is that when we work by circumstance, I tell people this all the time, and people, they get it, they understand it, but people don't know it. But here's the thing: when we work by circumstance, when you work by circumstance, you repeat your circumstance. Let me give you a great example of that. Many times people will say things like, Jim, I want to go into your coaching programs, but I don't have the money right now. What they don't write, so what they're doing here is they're saying, in my circumstance, I don't have the money, so therefore I'm not going to do it. And then what they're not even recognizing is that they're working from their circumstance. They are the person who created their circumstance. And if they never change who they are, they never change their circumstance. So please, this would be a foundational thing that I want you to get in all the episodes that I put out, is that when I work by circumstance, meaning you, when I work by circumstance, I repeat my circumstances. So what that means is if you want to create different things in your life, you can no longer work by circumstance. So big takeaway, it's a bit relative to what we're doing this week, and hopefully that will be a life-changing, thought and paradigm for you. Where we have to start working from is we have to start working from priority, meaning we have to start working from what am I going to make a priority so that I can shift and I can change my life. Now, notice what I just said about circumstance. If we work from circumstance, what we're also saying is that we're making our circumstance a priority over what it is that we want to create and do and be and have in life. That's why it's vital that going forward, after this podcast, that you start working from priority, meaning what is it that you want to create, and that has to be prioritized. The biggest mistake that most people make is that they work from short-term, low-hanging fruit tactics. What I mean by that is many people are so busy chasing money and what's right in front of them, which are tactics, low-hanging fruit money, as opposed to working from long-term strategy. And they manage their time in that whole process. And I have to say that I used to be that same person. I used to always look at, okay, I'm going to manage my time this week, and what I'm going to do with it, and this was all unconscious, by the way, and many of you do the same thing, is you say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z this week. And when you stand back and you look at it, what you're doing with your time, every bit of your time is invested in chasing, short-term tactics to make you money. And when you do that, you will never, ever, ever make the amount of money that you can make. Where we ideally want to work, and you can ask different people and time management experts and blah, blah, blah. But what I've noticed in my own life, where you ideally want to work towards, is you want to work towards looking at a 3-year strategy, meaning what can I do today to have my business up and running or my life or my health or whatever it is in 3 years. Also, a caveat there, there's no reason to worry or fret or any of that. I'm speaking more in terms of business. And when I say worry, I know some of you listening might have said, oh my God, 3 years, I need money now, or I need health now. Obviously, I'm talking about focusing on it now. But what I'm looking at also is what can I do in terms of long-term strategy as opposed to short-term tactics to actually create the outcomes that I want to create in life. Because if you notice when you're working the tactics, which this week is about time, and the allocation of it, have you noticed that when you're working the short-term tactics, you're generally like a dog chasing its tail? I mean, you're running from this to that, to this, to that, to this, to that, and you never get off the hamster wheel. A great example of that is I used to coach heavily in the real estate industry. And I remember this woman, she told me she was 55 years old, and she was telling me about how she was building her business. What she was doing is she was door knocking every day, which, by the way, is tedious. I mean, you're literally pounding the pavement, beating on people's doors, looking for somebody that's looking to, sell their property, and it's a lot of work. And I said, there's a bigger story here. I'm like, do you have any money saved, etc.? Do you have investments and all this kind of stuff? And she's like, no. So what she's doing, she's using all of her time, 100% of her time, to work a short-term tactic of door knocking, as opposed to actually allocating part of her time to look at a long-term strategy so that she doesn't have to door knock anymore. And quite literally, as I said, she's on a hamster wheel because every day it's the same thing over and over and over, and she's caught in a trap. Not only that, she said she's 55. I'm 54. I don't think 55 is old at all. I tell people 50 is the new 30. However, she doesn't have any money saved, and this tactic that she's trapped in literally keeps her trapped and chasing her tail and running every single day, doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's why it's so important that you prioritize. Now, what I told her is what I prioritize is what can I do to build a long-term strategy so that in 3 years, and it can be sooner. I mean, I've seen people one of my clients built a company that does $100 million a year in 4 years. But what I'm always looking at, I mean, it could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years. 3 years is not the magic number. It's just a number that I work by. It's, it can happen a lot quicker, but what I'm telling you is you want to actually prioritize some of your time and your energy and your effort to something that's going to get you bigger long-term rewards than chasing your tail every single day. So the best place for you to work from and to think from in this moment is, what am I committed to? Now, the lady that's door knocking, what she's committed to is short-term tactics, but she didn't even recognize she was committed to it. I mean, she didn't get up every day and say, you know what, I'm committed to chasing my tail today. I'm committed to chasing business. I'm committed to short-term tactics. No, it was completely unconscious. It was habitual. It was her unconscious paradigms and her value system. So a takeaway, again, write this down, is what you want to look at is what am I committed to? Because whatever you're committed to is what you want to prioritize. And then whatever you prioritize is where you want to invest the most amount of your time, energy, and money to get the bigger long-term outcomes. You know, something that we do is I tell people that we're also the biggest liar to ourselves. I see many people say things like, well, I'm committed to my health. Well, many times people aren't committed to their health. I haven't done it in a lot of years. I used to be a hypnotherapist, and I'd have women come to me and say, well, I want to lose weight because I want to be healthy. That's generally not the case for most people. Most people, and especially women, want to lose weight. Why? Because they want to be sexy to their husband or their partner, or they want to look, they're going to take family pictures in 3 months and they want to look better, or they're getting married, or they're going on vacation this summer and they want to look good in their bathing suit on the beach. Most of us lie to ourselves about why we think we want the outcomes that we want. But let's take going to the gym or a health club or a diet or whatever, for example. And by the way, diets don't work. That's a whole different episode. But people will say things like, you know what, I want to get healthy and I want to go to the gym. And then what happens, because we're talking about time this week, is they never go to the gym. And the reason they never go to the gym is because they've habituated and they are a person who's in the habit of never going to the gym, or they don't value health as much as they think that they do, or they're not committed to it. So as you can clearly see, it's obvious it's not about time. It's about what are the habits, the brain-based habits, what are the unconscious values, and what are the unconscious paradigms. That's what you want to look at, which is why I just said where you really want to work from is what am I committed to? We'll talk more about that in just a moment. I used the word commitment a few times, and I am certain that I'm going to do an episode on commitment at some point. However, most people want things, and generally it's an idle wish or a left brain analytical desire, like I want that house or I want that car, and they never find themselves creating it. And the reason why is because they can't stay committed, is because it's not in their identity. As I mentioned before, you might have heard me say before on another episode or somewhere else, is that my dad was an alcoholic. And I don't know if they're related, so I'm going to just give you the example here. But my dad, well, actually, I don't think they are related. Could be. But my dad was actually more committed to being an alcoholic than he was anything else. And of course, that's brain based, and there's chemicals involved and all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to leave that there for now. However, when it comes to commitment, I watched my father never finish anything ever. I mean, he'd start projects, home projects, whatever, and he would never finish. I can't think of one thing he ever finished. And literally, over the years, I'm like, well, did dad ever finish, anything? And he never did. So I learned at an unconscious level, which I do not operate from that place anymore, that it's okay to actually want things and not commit to them. And the reason that I tell you that is, if I had to guess, that probably applies to a lot of you listening right now, is that you want things, but you don't commit because you've never learned how to commit to things. So just take a look at that. Because as I said a little earlier, we fool ourselves. Many times also I see people will say things like, I've wanted a brand new house for 10 years, or I've wanted to start a new company for 7 years, or I've wanted this, or I've wanted that. And they always throw in like a lot, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And what I've recognized, and they don't recognize, is because they're working from the outside in instead of the inside out. What I've recognized is they don't understand the fundamentals that you're learning here in all these podcast episodes, is the be, do, have model, is we have to be it on the inside first. So what I'm wanting to drive home for you is what I'm wanting you to look at in your own life. Instead of managing your days and your life by time, hopefully this is going to reinforce one of the very first episodes that I did, is what we have to go back to is, who do I have to be? Because who you're being will determine exactly how you actually either invest or squander your time. Something one of my coaches said to me, and I've had coaches literally in my life for over 25 years, and one of my coaches, phenomenal coach, she said that if you don't know what you're committed to, you don't know how you're choosing. You might want to write that down. If I don't know what I'm committed to, I don't know how I'm choosing. Now, let's apply this to time and where you invest time. So let's say, for example, and I'm going to just use, because it's a real life example that just pops into my mind. well, everything's real life that I talk about, but there's a particular client that I remember this example. He used to, I live here in Texas, and he actually was in Dallas as well. And we generally have, until the last couple of years, we generally have very mild winters. And I remember we were talking about playing golf one afternoon, and I said, "Are you going to play golf on Friday?" And he said, "Nope." He goes, "I've got something else I have to do relative to building his business." And in that moment that I recognized, because I've watched him build a lot of things, I recognized that if we were going to play golf, that's a matter of us using our time. And where he was working from is he was working from, I'm more committed to building my business than I am playing golf. However, if he would have actually said, sure, let's go play golf, what I want to demonstrate here is, let me go back to the phrase, if you don't know what you're committed to, you don't know how you're choosing. So when I asked him if he wanted to play golf, he made a choice. And his choice was, nope, I'm going to build my business, because he knew what he was committed to. So I also want you to look at where that plays out in your own life. Do people ask you to do things and you're like, oh, sure, let's go do it. Yeah, I'm going to blow off something else, which means you're investing your time in something that doesn't actually get you to the bigger outcomes that you want. Why? Because you don't know what you're committed to. And when you don't know what you're committed to, you don't know how you're choosing. And when you don't know how you're choosing, you do not know how you're investing or squandering your time. So the ideal approach is for you to decide what you're committed to. And then what you want to do is you want to break that down into small steps and small tasks. A big strategy, and it's a faulty strategy that I see a lot of people use, is that when they have a big problem in life, they're looking for big solutions. And that's generally an ineffective strategy. What I mean by that is, if they need a lot of money, they're swinging for the fences. I mean, they're actually looking for big solutions. And what I've noticed is really what generally works over time is little solutions will fix big problems. But generally, big solutions generally won't fix big problems. So that all goes back to consistency, is that most of us do not work by consistency, and we don't work by consistency because we're not committed to something. So I know this is going to be mechanical for right now, but I want to get you started somewhere. Because I know that in the earlier episodes we did talk about subconscious reprogramming. In my opinion, that is the most, which I didn't teach you guys here in the podcast, but I got you guys started. In my interpretation, subconscious reprogramming is the most valuable life skill that you can ever learn, because you can use it for, use it for health and wellness. You can use it to reprogram your unconscious paradigms, your habits, everything. But yet, a lot of people, they hear it and they're like, oh, that's nice. And they go about their life and they completely forget about it and then wonder why they're not creating what they want. But to give you some tactics here instead of long-term strategy, which I guess you could turn it into long-term strategy as well, is like I just said. So you decide what you're committed to. Then you break it into small tasks. And then I went on that tangent about, people having big problems, wanting big solutions. It doesn't work that way. Break it into small tasks. Break it into things that are simple. Why? Because simple things give us quicker wins. And when we get quicker wins, we are then more likely to continue with the behavior, as opposed to something bigger we're trying to tackle. We don't achieve it and then we quit earlier. Then what you want to do is you want to prioritize your task, and then you want to habituate your task. And there is an episode here on habits. So that's a pretty simple formula, but again, it's simple, but a lot of people won't do it. And the reason they won't do it, let's go back to habits again. Somebody asked me recently, they said, Jim, why don't I do the things that I know that I need to be doing? Plain and simple. You're not in the habit of it. When I say plain and simple, life really is plain and simple. And we human beings, we love to complicate things. I mean, we love to make things really hard, and actually much harder than they need to be. I know over in the habit episode that I said, and I know when I say this, I know people hear it analytically, but later what I recognize is they hear it, they understand it, but they don't know it. When I said in that episode, and I don't remember if I did say it or didn't, but I'm 99% sure that I did, is that everything you have in life, everything you have, everything you don't have, is a reflection of unconscious habits. Then, whatever you're in the habit of is how you invest your time. So when I started, as I said, this is not about time, this is about habit. And what you may want to do is go back and search or look at or listen to the earlier episode on habits. Because see, you don't get in life what you want. You don't get in life what you want. I know I said it in that episode. You get your brain-based, unconscious habits. And if you want more in life, and by the way, we even use our time habitually. If you want more in life, stop doing all these things that people do, which I'll get to in a moment about beliefs. Stop that and habituate it. Actually, let's get to it now. When I say beliefs, and I believe I mentioned in that episode, is people actually left brain analyze, yes, and they will say, yes, I believe I want X, Y, Z. I want the new house, number one diamond, blah, blah, blah status in my multi-level marketing company. I want this, I want that, and I believe that I want it because I see other people having it, and if they have it, I can have it. Only reason they don't have, and it never happens 98% of the time, is because they don't have the unconscious paradigms. And again, the paradigms are what drive the investment of time. I used to speak at the same events as Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know if he's still out and about or how big he is or whatever. He wrote the series, and his whole foundation was Rich Dad Poor Dad. But he said, and you might have heard this before, something along the lines of the most valuable asset that you have is time, because you cannot get your time back. So what you want to start looking at is what you've been committed to. And people also don't understand that. I do a transformational coaching program. We do a week on commitment, and people will say, oh my God, I never realized that I'm not really committed to anything in life. I've never been committed to anything. I've never gotten anything done. I basically have just used tactics day by day to get through life. And what I tell people, every one of you listening right now, is that you've always been committed to something. You are always committed to something. It's just a matter of what you're committed to. And then whatever you're committed to is how you invest your time, energy, and everything else. So let's say, for example, you're 100 pounds overweight. Well, and by the way, I can defend every bit of this. I might hear somebody saying this and they're going to take offense to it or whatever. But it all goes back to the paradigms, and we learn our habits through habituation very early in life and our unconscious paradigms. But where I'm going here is somebody could say, well, I'm not committed to being overweight. Well, if you're doing all the things that you're doing, you've got paradigms unconsciously that drive it. Yes, you are committed to it. So a person is lying on the couch and they're watching, all these reruns of TV shows and everything else, 3 hours a night, and they're overweight. And only an example, guys, no offense to anyone, just an example and a metaphor. Well, you know what? You're committed to the ways of being and the habits that get you, that you invest your time in the way that you do, or you squander it, and you get the outcomes that you don't want. A bigger takeaway here, or to simplify this, is listen very carefully. You're always committed to something. It's just a matter of what you're committed to. You're committed to the gym. You're not committed to the gym. You're committed to healthy eating. You're not. You're committed to lead generation or business building or building relationships, or you're not. And you are in varying degrees, but you're not. If you're not getting the results that you want, then you're more committed to doing and being and using your time in ways that don't get you the outcome that you want. Okay, that was a mouthful. I got that out, and hopefully you understand that by this point. And hopefully you're getting in your time with me is obviously, you're here. You're here because you want to go to a higher emotional state in life. I mean, that's we're all wired to want to go to higher emotional states. You look at babies crying in the crib. I mean, a baby's crying because they want to be held, they're hungry, they want love, they want their diaper changed. They're wanting to go to a higher emotional state. You're here and you're listening because you want to go to a higher emotional state. But hopefully, in your entire time with me, you're getting that creating the higher emotional states, which means the outcomes that you want in life, it's not about doing more, it's about being more. Everyone wants more, and they think they have to do more, but that's the wrong and ineffective and broken strategy, is that you have to be more, which goes all the way back to, I believe, episode number 1 or number 2, and I am referencing those because a lot of this content ties together. Even though they're different episodes, it all ties together. When I talk about being, let me give you an example here. Many years ago, I used to work out 5 days a week. I mean, I was in the gym lifting free weights literally every afternoon, Monday through Friday. And the time that I'd go to the gym, there was like 3 o'clock, and there weren't a lot of people in there. And there was this other guy that worked out when I did, and he was like in extraordinary shape. I thought he was a trainer, but he was actually training on his own time or something. And he spotted me one day and we started talking. And I said, "Are you a trainer?" And I even said, "You know what? Because, I've been to a lot of gyms over the years, and many times trainers are not even in shape." This guy was walking his talk. And I said, "You know what? You obviously know what you're doing. I want to hire you as my trainer." And he said, "I'm not a trainer." And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm in pharmaceutical sales." What I want to point out here about how we invest our time comes from who we are. Something he said to me was this. He goes, "I'm in pharmaceutical sales." And he goes, "You know what? I go to a lot of business dinners and we go out and everyone else has steak and potatoes and salads and dressing and wine. When I have, chicken and steamed veggies and rice and water." And this is what he said that I want you to understand. And this also comes to identity. And identity actually determines how he uses his time. So he uses his time in the gym 5 days a week. And this is what he said. He said, "I do that because that is who I am." So you look at, if you want to know who you are, look at how you use your time. Because using your time, again, as external, will tell you who you are and your unconscious values, your unconscious filters, and your brain-based habits. So, your transformational takeaway. Instead of working from the clock and by the clock, where you want to start working from is, what am I committed to? Now, even by saying that, it doesn't mean that you will actually be committed to it. Our objective is to actually condition you and habituate you to being committed to it. So what I suggest you do is what I said a little earlier is, let's take the gym, for example. Let's say that you're committed to being in shape. Let's say that you want to go to the gym. What a lot of people do not do is they do not recognize the difference between macro habits and micro habits. And then what they do is they don't have the micro habits to support the macro habits. So the example of that about the gym would be this. Let's say the habit of going to the gym is a macro habit. It's the big habit. It's the target goal. However, every morning you're like, "Where's my gym clothes? I don't have any clean clothes to wear to the gym. Where are my gym shoes? Oh my gosh, I'm running late today and my gym bag is not packed." Well, see, that gym bag being packed is a micro habit that supports the macro habit. So what I would tell you to do is every night before you go to bed, you have your gym bag packed and you have it in the back seat of your car or wherever you have it, or however you're going to, you're going to get it to the gym, and you have that because you've used that micro habit that you need by not doing the micro habit to sabotage the macro habit. So, one of the takeaways this week is look at your habits and start small. And when I say start small, also, it would be the micro habit. Is what is something that I can start doing small every day that will actually, when I do it, I can habituate it. And if I do this every day, then this will get me the outcome that I want. Something else is look at your values. And I'll give you some examples. In my transformational coaching program, we do a week on subconscious values. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here because this will be a big aha for a lot of you. And generally, not always, but I work with pretty much 80% professionals of some kind or another. They're in some kind of professional career, or they are a business builder, entrepreneur. And what we do is we go through a subconscious values exercise. And what's shocking is the amount of people, after we go through the exercise, I'll say, "What are your top 10 values?" And then I break those down even further. And I take people through a process to actually help them unconsciously determine their values, not analytically determine their values. And what's interesting is, I would say, and I've done this long enough to really project this or prognosticate it or whatever, or guess, is that probably 50 to 70% of people that are business people don't even have money in their top 10 values. Now, the interesting thing about that is, because they don't have money in their top 10 unconscious values, is they're never making any money. And then they wonder why they're broke. And they analytically think, "Well, I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I need to make money." Well, the reason they don't is because it's not in their unconscious values. So, when you look at your own life, if you're not making money, I'm going to tell you this, because people have all these convoluted beliefs about money. It's probably not in your value system. And then if it's not in your value system, you're not doing it. And if you're not doing it, that means you're not investing your time in a way to create the outcome that you want. On the flip side of that, for example, a good friend of mine, he does very, very well financially. And one of his highest values is his kids. He's got two small kids. So what he will do is when it comes to investing time, he literally will actually if he has to pick between business and he's not in crunch time or his family, he will always pick his kids because why? That's a higher value to him than making money. But also he does have I've coached him actually. He does have money in his higher values. But notice what I'm sharing with you here is that he will determine how he's going to invest his time based upon his unconscious value system. So going forward, no longer do we actually work by the clock. We work by our habits and our values and our commitments. And when you do that, you will find things changing for you. So you may want to write this down. And I say again, mainly because it's just a habit, is if you're not driving, is a sentence that will serve you well as this is what am I committed to and who do I have to be to make it happen? What am I committed to and who do I have to be to make it happen? Okay, before I tell you about the next episode, I want to actually just tell you just a tiny bit about the upcoming transformational coaching program. And by the way, that's what the program is called, TCP, the Transformational Coaching Program. The fact that you're here, as I said earlier, means that you want to create better things in your life. You want more. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I mean, why listen to a podcast unless if you're not wanting to get something out of it? Okay, that wraps up this episode. I want to share with you also something that I say to a lot of people, and especially people that work with me. So I'm going to say it, and I've never said it in this podcast, is we are living in very, very tumultuous times right now on this planet. We have a lot of chaos going on in the world. The world needs you. It needs me. The more that we evolve ourselves, the more that we grow, the more that we can help other people. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing, and I'll catch you over on the next episode or wherever I catch you next. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.